These are the most interesting historical photos and unusual objects from the past. Let's get 100,000 subscribers. On the set of Viva Maria. In 1965, Brigitte Bardot and Jean Moreau rehearse a balcony scene with a prop Maxim-style heavy weapon. Early 1900s winters sometimes built a huge ice bridge below Niagara Falls, making the falls look frozen solid. The water still ran under the crust. Only once, in March 1848, did the flow nearly stop because of an ice jam upstream. Under a scanning electron microscope, a snowflake becomes a tiny city of ridges and columns, only fractions of a millimeter wide. Scientists flash freeze it and add a thin metal layer to reveal the hidden hexagon design. Scheveningen, the Netherlands, 1908. An electric tram was disguised as a tiny hotel with a thatched roof, ivy, and artificial bricks for a competition for the best tram. Nintendo began in 1889 in Kyoto as a maker of handmade playing cards. At the same time, London was gripped by the unsolved Whitechapel case, often called Jack the Ripper. From a plane, a rain shaft appears as a bright column dropping from one cloud onto a small patch of land. These local showers can be only a few kilometers wide, so nearby areas stay dry while this spot is soaked. In 1865, frontier showman Seth Kinman presented President Andrew Johnson with this grizzly bear chair made from the fur and claws of 2 California grizzlies. It regulated both the foreign kind of boarder and the foreign ruler. Sequoia National Park, 1917. Campers parked a Model T on a fallen giant sequoia, a trunk wide enough for a car and a tent. These trees can live over 2,000 years and grow more than 25 feet across. Key West, Florida. This cottage was Pan American Airways' first office, where the airline opened its route to Havana in 1927. Decades later, it became actress Kelly McGillis's bar and brewery, a small landmark with the old sign out front. In 2020, Peru's culture team revealed a hillside cat figure near the Nazca lines, about 120 feet long and roughly 2,000 years old. Cleaning work made its faded lines clear again, showing how ancient artists drew on the land itself. James Webb Space Telescope uses a 6.5-meter gold mirror and infrared light to see through dust and map gas around new stars. Images like this reveal hidden structure with record detail and help explain how stars are born. The span from today to World War II matches the span from World War II back to the United States Civil War. Here, an Allied tank moves past a shop in the Netherlands in the 1940s. In 1977, President Jimmy Carter sent this greeting on the Voyager Golden Record, a time capsule for any space travelers. It speaks for Earth, sharing our sounds and images, and a hope for peace. Released in 1994, the IBM Simon was the first phone to combine a touchscreen with calling, email, fax, and simple apps. It launched at $899 and lasted less than a year. Dubai, 1965. Wooden dhows line Dubai Creek beside low-rise coral houses and sand tracks. This trading port held about 60,000 people, 1 year before the oil find that began its rapid growth. In 1928, a woman sits for a shoulder tattoo with an early coil machine first patented in 1891. By the late 1920s, studios and fairs spread body art, and women chose small birds, names, and charms. Border crossing card from 1943 for non-resident visitors making regular trips into the United States. During the war, it let nearby Canadian and Mexican residents enter for work or shopping without a full visa. New York City, December 26, 1906. A young newsboy with a crutch stands on Delancey Street as other newsies rush past. Thousands of children sold papers then, until new labor rules and school laws slowly ended the trade. Queens, late 19th century. Workers cut Kiss-in-a-Lake into a grid to harvest ice for New York. Packed in sawdust in ice houses, these blocks cooled homes and markets before electric refrigerators. In 1956, a magazine imagined a pocket videophone with touch buttons, voice control, and compressed sound and picture. It even promised television on your phone, decades before mobile phones existed. New York, October 10, 1934. Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia smashed seized coin-operated machines aboard a police boat. The wreckage was then thrown into the harbor to show the city's new crackdown. Mid-1800s. The U.S. Capitol shows only the drum of its new iron dome as crews replace the old wooden top. Work continued into the 1860s as a national signal of unity and progress. Walter Christie is testing his front-wheel drive chassis on city streets. His spiral spring Christie suspension, later, in the 30s and 40s, shaped high-speed tanks. Vietnam, 1948. Hoa Ho women train in the jungle with bamboo spears, swords, and old rifles for self-defense. Life magazine recorded their training during the outbreak of the conflict in Indochina, a rare case when women undergo field training. Zululand, 1879. Zulu regiments pose with cowhide shields and short spears for close formation fighting. They won early at Isandlwana, but later lost to British troops with rifles and artillery. Victorian inventors built real submarines before Verne's Nautilus, testing hand crank, steam, and early electric power. Boats like Ictineo II, Resurgam, and Gymnote proved underwater travel was possible. Horse-drawn double-decker streetcar, 1882. Steel wheels on rails let 2 horses pull dozens with ease. These horse trams served many cities for decades until electric motors took over. Japan, 1901. School-age girls carry baby brothers and sisters on their backs using the onbu style while parents worked. Wooden gaita sandals and patterned kimono show everyday dress in rural towns. 1960s lounge scene. A blonde muse beams at the suave actor beside her, while the young rock star sits sidelined. Moments like this fed celebrity gossip long before social media. 1940s. A skater glides beside her uniformed boyfriend during leave, a common sight at wartime rinks. Roller rinks doubled as dance halls and morale clubs for service members. In the 1950s, engineer William Ross Aiken built a thin cathode ray tube under 3 inches thick, aimed at wall-mount TVs and cockpit displays. Business decisions at major firms stalled adoption, so flat screens reached homes decades later. May 1912. The new Queensboro Bridge carries traffic toward Manhattan, while empty lots still line Queens. Opened in 1909, its cantilever span linked Long Island City to Midtown via Roosevelt Island and sped growth. In Tuscany, small wine windows let sellers pass drinks through walls during 17th-century outbreaks. Centuries later, shops revived them for contact-free service. Bangui, 1977. Jean Bedel Bokassa crowned himself emperor in a ceremony modeled on Napoleon, seated on a giant eagle throne. The spectacle cost tens of millions and briefly renamed the nation the Central African Empire. Vietnam, 1966. Marine Private Delton Gunderson scans the field after Operation Virginia with a scoped rifle. The crossed ankle sitting position gave a steadier aim during long watches. London, 1963. Cassius Clay trains by jogging beside a royal carriage before his Henry Cooper bout. The staged run mixed fitness with showmanship and became an iconic pre-fight image. Thermocap hair growth hat, early 20th century. A heated light bulb dome warmed the scalp to boost blood flow. It was sold for thinning hair, but tests showed little real effect. Canada, 1980. Terry Fox began his marathon of hope on a prosthetic leg, aiming to cross the country. He ran over 5,000 kilometers in 143 days and sparked yearly runs that fund research. USA, 1930. 4 models show the shift from long nightgowns to shorter, lighter pajama styles. Designers adopted new fabrics and cuts as women's sleepwear moved toward comfort and freedom. Georgia, 1914. Kevsur fighters pose in chainmail with small round shields and long rifles. When news reached the mountains, they rode to Tbilisi to volunteer for national defense. New York, circa 1904. The IRT powerhouse packed a city block with huge steam engines and dynamos for the new subway. It sent electricity to the first trains, making fast underground travel possible. In deep winter, spray from hose streams turned this facade into an ice wall of sheets and hanging spikes. Crews worked in sub-zero air, then had to dig hydrants and ladders out of heavy ice. The back of the United States $100 note changed in 1977, 2003, and 2017, but still shows Independence Hall. Newer notes add color, a blue security ribbon, microprinting, and color-shifting ink to block fakes. Furness Railway. Number 20, built in 1863, is the oldest steam locomotive still running in Britain. It was hauling trains 2 years before the United States adopted the 13th Amendment in 1865. 1952. Ad for a cook-and-wash refrigerator, a tiny 5-square-foot kitchen with a fridge, sink, and gas or electric burners. It was sold as an all-in-one space saver for small apartments and trailers. In 1971 in Japan, Daisuke Inoue built the first karaoke machine so bar guests could sing with backing tracks. He never patented it, and years later he won an Ig Nobel Prize for giving people a new way to sing together. May 1939. The liner St. Louis, carrying about 900 Jewish refugees, was turned away from Cuba, the United States, and Canada. The ship returned to Europe, and about a quarter of its passengers later perished in the Holocaust. London, 1945. A rescue worker cradles a cat on a shattered street after a V1 strike. Amid the debris, small saves like this lifted spirits during the city's hard days. 1970s Wonder Sauna hot pants were inflatable shorts meant to make you sweat off inches while sitting still. Ads even showed an AAU logo to suggest sports approval, though results were doubtful. Suez Canal, 1944. The British battleship HMS Howe squeezes through on its way between fleet duties. A tiny Egyptian dhow glides beside the giant hull, a sharp size contrast in a narrow man-made channel. New York, 1890. This corner was called Longacre Square, covered in posters and horse traffic. It became Times Square in 1904 when the New York Times moved here and the new subway opened. Kumamoto Castle, 1890. Its keep and steep Mushigaishi stone walls still stand firm just 13 years after the Satsuma Rebellion. Built in the early 1600s, its layered defenses made it one of Japan's toughest strongholds. Paris, August 29, 1944. Soldiers of the 28th Infantry Division marched down the Champs-Élysées after the city's liberation. The Arc de Triomphe anchors the avenue as crowds cheer a turning point in the war. Atlanta, 1918. Fans at a Georgia Tech football game wear cloth masks during the flu outbreak. Outdoor games sometimes continued with simple rules, like masks and open-air seating. Mid-20th century ad for a fly pistol that sprayed liquid insecticide at houseflies from a short distance. Sold as safe for walls and drapes, it was mostly a novelty, not a real pest solution. Manfred von Richthofen, the Red Baron, greets his Great Dane Moritz during World War I. The ace was credited with 80 aerial victories by 1918. Bessie Coleman earned an international pilot license in France in 1921 after U.S. schools refused her. By 1922, she flew air shows. She was the first Black and Native American woman pilot, inspiring new flyers worldwide. In 1964, Ready Whip sold Ready Bacon, pre-cooked strips in foil pouches meant to pop into a toaster for a 90-second breakfast. Grease leaks ruined many toasters, so the product vanished and became a quirky footnote. Brooklyn Army Terminal, 1945. Freight trains rolled inside the well, where hoists lifted ration cases straight to balcony bins. This giant concrete warehouse fed the supply line that moved troops and cargo to waiting ships. Early 1900s. New York firefighters use a pulmotor, a suitcase resuscitator that pumped air into smoke victims. These machines rode on engines citywide before oxygen kits and modern CPR replaced them. In 1952, the United States Air Force coined unidentified flying object as a neutral, technical label for any unknown thing in the sky. Earlier cases like 1947 used flying discs or saucers, but UFO covered balloons, planes, and more. This antique door from 1380 in Regensburg, Germany, helps finding the keyhole after you drank too much wine. Rail ticket dated August 18, 1890, issued by the Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and St. Louis Railway for a one-way trip in Pennsylvania. Paper passes were hand-stamped at the station and later punched by the conductor on board. Built in 1884 on Central Park West, the Dakota stood so far uptown that New Yorkers joked it was out in the Dakotas. It offered unheard-of luxury, its own power plant, elevators, and a quiet courtyard, while the streets around it were still half rural. France, June 6, 1944. Canadian troops land at Juno Beach under barrage balloons that forced hostile planes higher. By night, they held a firm beachhead and pushed farther inland than any other Allied force that day. Old West riders often wore bowlers or sombreros, not giant 10-gallon hats. The wide-brim Stetson spread only in the late 1800s, while the huge movie hat look came from 1920s westerns. Manhattan's Pier 57 burns as New York City fireboats surround the wharf, blasting seawater from high-capacity pumps. They contain the blaze and keep it from spreading to nearby piers and the National Biscuit Company. Britain, early 20th century. A women's Royal Naval Service instructor checks recruits' gas masks during a drill. After 1915, masks became standard gear across forces, so even sailors trained for bad air on ships and docks. This is a horio, a raised granary from Galicia, Asturias, and Cantabria in northwest Spain. Stone pillars with mushroom caps stop rats climbing, and slotted walls keep grain dry and cool. Quake II era, late 1990s. Players hauled towers and heavy CRTs to link PCs by Ethernet and play with near-zero delay. LAN parties kickstarted early esports. New York City, late September 2001. A small plane captured this view from about 1,000 meters above the World Trade Center site. The 16-acre area in the center shows the vast cleanup work amid the street grid of Lower Manhattan. Inuit blanket toss, called Nalukatak, began when hunters bounced a scout on a walrus or seal skin to spot game across the ice. Today, it's a festival tradition, a high jump that shows Arctic skill and teamwork. 16-year-old Betty Robinson won the first Olympic gold medal in the women's 100 meters in 1928. After a plane crash in 1931, she returned to win gold in the relay in 1936. Afghanistan, 1996. Seized alcohol, much of it Russian vodka, was stacked for disposal beside a tank with a white flag after Kabul was taken. This marked the rapid shutdown of drink shops and a swift return to strict public rules. Rome, 1934. Palazzo Braschi, then the party headquarters, was covered with giant SI banners and a portrait of Benito Mussolini. The repeated yes pushed approval in a national vote, turning the facade into a billboard for power. Soviet Union, late 1970s. A parent and child wear training masks during a civil defense drill in a city park. Everyday life and preparedness overlapped like this across many towns. USSR, 1950s, 1960s. The tank filmoscope let kids project roll film strips at home with a small bulb and lens. Cheap, sturdy, and easy to load, it became a living room mini-cinema for a generation. May 1961. The first Soviet cosmonaut corps pause on holiday weeks after Vostok 1. Many here soon flew Vostok and Voskhod missions that shaped early spaceflight. Across Europe in the 1800s, cast-iron scrapers like this sat by doors so people could knock mud off before stepping inside. They predated paved streets and protected floors, and many homes kept them as small heritage details. Mexico City, 1956. The first known photo of Fidel Castro and Che Guevara shows them detained in a small cell after a police sweep. Months later, they boarded the yacht Grandma and began the campaign that reshaped Cuba. 1910's aircraft factory. Women brush cellulose dope onto fabric wings to shrink and stiffen them before assembly. The finish sealed the cloth, boosted strength with little weight, and helped early planes fly faster. Downey, 1962. The original Taco Bell building opened by Glenn Bell, with the arched windows and red tile roof. It was moved in 2015 to the company's Irvine headquarters as a preserved landmark. In 1997, a one-day Disneyland passport cost $28.75 for adults and $23 for children, stamped with the visit date. Paper tickets like these soon gave way to barcodes and then digital passes. Marie Curie, shown with daughters Irene and Eve, was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize, and later the first person to win two in different sciences. After losing her husband in 1906, she raised them while working in the lab, and Irene Joliot-Curie won the 1935 Nobel Prize in chemistry. A sergeant listens as a village elder points out damage to her street. Scenes like this were common across Europe in the mid-1940s as towns were reclaimed. New York City, October 1933. The 9th Avenue L ran stacked tracks, locals below and express above, near the 66th Street station. Manhattan's first elevated line, it was torn down in the 1940s as subways took over. London, 1825. Brixton Prison used one of the first treadwheels, where prisoners walked steps that turned a drum. The machine powered mills or pumps and served as disciplined hard labor. New York City, early 1910s. The fire department demonstrates a former horse-drawn steam pumper refitted with a motor. Motorizing cut response times and let crews keep the strong boiler pump in service without stables. A rare fire whirl forms as heat and wind twist rising flames into a spinning column. Such vortexes can throw embers far away and make a small fire spread fast. Harvard College, 1869. A semester bill totals $170 for instruction, room, fuel, and gas. In today's money, that is roughly several $1,000s, a fraction of modern tuition. A 1930s wooden radio cabinet has been repurposed into a working aquarium. Big tube radios left roomy cabinets, perfect for creative conversions like this. 1945. A U.S. Monuments officer inspects a 500-year-old sculpture taken from Krakow and hidden in Nuremberg. Allied teams traced thousands of seized artworks and returned them to their museums. Sinai, 1944. Yugoslav refugees at a Suez Canal camp rest on the bank as ships pass the waterway. Egypt sheltered tens of thousands from the Balkans here, far from the front lines. Paris, 1968. President Charles de Gaulle steps from an Alouette helicopter after flying back from Germany amid nationwide unrest. He had disappeared for a day, then returned to dissolve parliament and call snap elections. Pearl Harbor, December 7, 1941. Smoke towers over Battleship Row as crews race small boats to rescue and fight fires. The surprise strike pulled the United States into World War II the next day. Ostend, Belgium. The original Kursaal Casino opened in 1875, a grand seaside hall for theater, music, and high society. It was torn down by German forces in World War II. A modern hall by Leon Steinen opened on the site in 1950. 1997. A self-portrait camera stick from the book 99. More unuseless Japanese inventions let compact cameras take wider self-photos. The odd gadget predicted the smartphone selfie stick boom by more than a decade. United States, late 1960s. A post office card told households their new zip code, part of a system launched in 1963 to speed mail sorting. The little cartoon is Mr. Zip, used nationwide to remind people to write all 5 digits. Britain, 1890. A compensation chart lists average damages for workplace injuries from about $250 to $1,000 depending on which limb was lost. Such tables guided industrial-era claims before modern safety laws and insurance. Los Angeles, early 1900s. Walburga, Dolly, Österreich, hid teen handyman Otto Sanhuber in her attic. After a 1922 dispute, her husband Fred died. The secret surfaced in 1930, and neither went to prison. In letterpress shops, capital letters were stored in the uppercase and small letters in the lowercase, hence uppercase and lowercase. The compartments were arranged by frequency so compositors could grab common letters fast. New York City, late 1920s. A flapper hangs a poster for the Greenwich Village Halloween Ball featuring bandleader Paul Whiteman. The village turned such nights into bohemian street festivals with music, costumes, and crowds. Summer, 1975. A local paper ad touts the PG debut of Jaws as the terrifying motion picture. Spielberg's Thriller became the first modern summer blockbuster, reshaping movie marketing and box office seasons. 1922. 16-year-old Aloha Wanderwell set out in a Ford Model T and became the first woman to drive around the world. Through the 1920s, she logged hundreds of thousands of miles across dozens of countries, filming the journey. United States, 1939. A migrant mother and child rest in their car, faces dusted from travel during the Great Depression. New Deal photographers like Dorothea Lange recorded families like this to show the crisis to the nation. Early 1900s. Music hall star Lily Flexmore throws a sky-high kick from the cabaret stage. Vaudeville dance boomed then, mixing acrobatics and theater that shaped modern show dance. Late 1800s, early 1900s. Hotels and homes posted signs like this when electric lighting replaced gas. Guests were told not to use matches, just turn the wall key, and assured electricity was safe for sleep. Life.wav, 1919. The improvised armored tractor, Kresovets, was built on a Praga farm chassis with riveted plates and slit viewports. Only one was made, and records of any field use are scarce. 1920s, 1930s toy washing machine, a hand-cranked glass drum with twin agitators for cleaning doll clothes. Many were also used as salesmen's demos to show how full-size washers worked. Japan, 1930s. Students rehearse synchronized marching under an instructor, practicing high steps and timed salutes. Soviet Union, 1960s. Teens cling to the back of a trolleybus for a free ride, nicknamed hares. Cities ran safety campaigns after frequent accidents from this stunt. Paris, early 1880s. Artisans built the Statue of Liberty in Frederick Bartholdi's workshop, shaping copper sheets over wooden forms. It was then packed into crates, shipped to New York, and assembled on Bedloe's Island in 1886. 1960s novelty card, a spoof, backseat driver's license from the make-believe state of nervousness Bureau of Nuisances, sold as a gag to tease chatty passengers who nitpick the driver. Los Angeles, early 1970s. 14-year-old Melanie Griffith shares a bed with the family's lion, Neil, kept for Tippi Hedren's Big Cat project. The experiment later fed into the film Roar, remembered for risky on-set mishaps. World War II. The crew of an M10 Wolverine tank destroyer shelter in a dugout beneath their vehicle, camouflaged with sandbags and branches. The open-topped M10 carried a 3-inch gun and served with U.S. and Allied units from Tunisia to Normandy. 1937. Amelia Earhart stands with her Cord 812 Phaeton and her Lockheed Electra 10E. The front-wheel drive Cord and twin-engine Electra symbolized speed as she prepared for her round-the-world attempt. 1957. Theodore Dr. Seuss Geisel sketches the Grinch while finishing How the Grinch Stole Christmas. The fast-written book soon became a holiday classic and inspired TV specials. Niagara Falls, 1969. A temporary cofferdam diverted nearly all water from the American Falls, exposing the bare rock wall and boulder field. For 6 months, engineers mapped cracks, studied erosion, and planned stabilization work. Wax figure of Marie Tussaud, the French artist who turned face casts into a touring show and opened her London museum in 1835. Her galleries later became the global Madame Tussauds brand, visited by millions. Florence, 1913. Uffizi director Giovanni Poggi inspects the recovered Mona Lisa after it vanished from the Louvre for 2 years. Vincenzo Perugia had hidden in a closet and walked out with the panel under his coat, saying it belonged in Italy. New York, December 1964. Che Guevara appears on CBS's Face the Nation during a visit tied to his United Nations speech. A rare U.S. TV interview shows him relaxed in olive fatigues at the studio desk. December 1953. Marilyn Monroe appeared on the first Playboy cover, though she never posed for the magazine. Hefner licensed a 1949 calendar photo, and the debut sold over 50,000 copies. 1962. Humble Oil, later part of Exxon, ran an ad bragging it supplied enough energy to melt 7 million tons of glacier per day. The boast sold power then, but reads starkly today amid climate concerns. 1962, Cold War, canned emergency drinking water, like this, was stocked in lifeboats and fallout shelters under U.S. Coast Guard approval. This 10 2/3 ounce tin was made for long storage and opened only when other supplies ran out. Mid-1930s, an early television with a tiny screen brings flickering live pictures to a few homes. Sets were rare and costly, and many countries paused broadcasts during World War II. 1938, NBC executive Warren Wade interviews a Bronx schoolgirl on what she hopes to see from the new medium of television. Early broadcasts often doubled as public experiments to test audience curiosity and tech limits. Vintage vineyard tool, finger-mounted grape knives used to snip clusters fast without crushing the fruit. Leather straps held a small curved blade so pickers could twist and cut thousands per day. Iraq, 2003. U.S. troops found trucks and rooms stacked with gold bullion and posed with the seized bars before turning them over to authorities. The weapons of mass destruction line is a later joke. These were valuables, not evidence of special weapons. 1962. Communities issued cards after the new oral Sabin vaccine, often given as drops on a sugar cube. Stamps showed all 3 types completed, helping push polio out of everyday life. New York City, January 1938. Times Square's daytime bustle frames the Times Building, Lowe's State, Hotel Astor, and the Gaiety Theater. Electric signs sold movies and vaudeville long before the neon canyon of today. Flushing, Queens, June 1894. Riders from the Marcus Mercury Wheel Club line up at the track for a mass start bicycle race. The 1890s wheel craze built velodromes nationwide and made safety bicycles a mainstream sport. 1930s wall telephone with a separate receiver and fixed mouthpiece, still mounted in a private apartment. You'd lift the receiver, speak into the horn, and the operator, or early dial exchange, would route your call. 1915, the Michelin Man, then called Bibendum, stars in The Rib of Life, an ad pushing detachable rims and inner tubes for quick roadside fixes. Early mascots looked like stacked tires and headlined posters across Europe. New York, 1902. The original Waldorf Astoria still ran as 2 adjoining hotels, the Waldorf and the Astoria, linked by Peacock Alley. The Gilded Age giant was demolished in 1929, and the Empire State Building rose on its site. Watchman's Key Station. Night guards stopped here and inserted a special key to timestamp their patrol clock, proving each checkpoint was visited. Systems like DTEX and Newman were standard in hospitals and factories from the early 1900s. Around 1938, kids stage a backyard marionette show of Snow White after the film's success sparked home puppet plays. Using wooden crossbars and string joints, they practiced timing and voice cues for small neighborhood crowds. Early 1900s. Urban letter carriers used three-wheeled handcarts to haul booming bulk mail that outgrew a shoulder bag. Postmasters bought single carrier carts with a balancing front wheel, speeding routes and saving backs. Late 1800s multi-cavity mold for casting round lead balls, one handle is missing, used in the black powder era to make several sizes with one tool. Molten metal was poured in, then the sprue was clipped, producing shot or even fishing weights from scrap. Budapest, 1939. A street teacher leads Roma children in violin practice in a tenement courtyard. Hungary's Romani violin tradition shaped café and folk music across Central Europe. Mid-century kitchen gadget, a wall-mounted ice crusher. Ice goes in the top, crank turns blades, and the C to F lever selects coarse or fine. These were common before freezers and fridge dispensers made cube and crushed ice at home. Monaco, 1937. Silver racers thunder past the casino as crowds fill the grandstands. Manfred von Brauchitsch won in a Mercedes-Benz W125, a supercharged giant built for tight street racing. 1965. An agency partial expense reimbursement form lists a $300 adoption fee, payable on a plan. Agencies labeled charges as administrative costs rather than payment for the child. USSR, 1968. A mains-powered electric toothbrush with a vibrating motor and snap-on heads, using a 2-pin plug. Such early models were rare at home, but promoted by clinics during new oral hygiene campaigns. 1956. Frank Lloyd Wright visits Southdale Center in Edina, the first fully enclosed climate-controlled shopping mall in the United States. Opened weeks earlier and designed by Victor Gruen, it became the template for the American Mall. For a brief era, the Hollywood Bowl had a reflecting pool-turned fountain in front of the stage, added in 1959 for a dramatic backdrop. After fans took a dip during Jimi Hendrix's 1968 show, the fountain was removed in 1972, but the area is still called the Pool Circle. 1968. Scholl pitched driving casuals with glove-soft leather and non-slip soles, claiming they cut driving fatigue and improved pedal control. Priced at 65 shillings in the UK, they helped popularize purpose-built driving shoes beyond racing. Vintage phone booth ventilator, a Bell System corner fan that once had soft rubber blades to move air while you talked. Many cabinets had these to keep the glass booth from getting stuffy. The blades here are long gone. A postal telegraph from 1933 shows how urgent family news crossed states in minutes. Brief, paid-by-the-word messages like this were common before home telephones became widespread. The 1/24 scale Hogwarts model was used for sweeping exterior shots across all 8 films. Model makers updated it between productions with new details like trees, snow, and tiny lit windows. In 1952, Mr. Potato Head was sold as a box of face pieces for a real potato or any fruit or vegetable. In 1964, a plastic potato body replaced the produce after new safety rules, and it became the first toy advertised on television. More than 80,000 fans packed Boyle's 30 Acres in Jersey City for Jack Dempsey versus Georges Carpentier in 1921. It became boxing's first $1 million gate and an early nationwide radio event, with Dempsey keeping the title. Jean Calment of France holds the longest confirmed human lifespan, living from 1875 to 1997 for 122 years and 164 days. As a girl in Arles, she met Vincent van Gogh, and late in life she signed a life annuity on her apartment that paid out for decades. Blacksmiths stand with the anchor chain for the ocean liner RMS Mauritania, launched in 1906. The ship needed huge hand-forged links to secure a many-ton anchor during Atlantic storms. Alfred Langevin was a vaudeville performer in the 1930s, known for blowing smoke from his eye. He used the tiny tear duct passage between eye and nose to pull air in and vent it out through the eye. A World War II serviceman's wallet holds a small archive of daily life: membership cards, steamship papers, a photo, and credit identification from the 1930s and 1940s. These pieces quietly map his work, travel, and community in a time before digital records. In the 1940s and 1950s, Camel ran "More Doctors Smoke Camels" ads, citing surveys of over 113,000 doctors by 3 research firms. Later rules and the 1964 Surgeon General report ended medical endorsements in cigarette ads, and TV advertising for cigarettes was banned in 1971. Beijing, 1989. 2 civilians take cover under a bridge as tanks move through the city during the Tiananmen Square unrest. The scene contrasts quiet daily life with heavy military presence at a historic moment. Normandy, 1947. A woman looks toward wrecked ships still grounded on Omaha Beach, 3 years after the Allied landings. Many craft and harbor pieces lingered for years as tides and salvagers slowly cleared the shore. Kolo, born at the Columbus Zoo in 1956, was the first gorilla ever born in a zoo. She lived until 2017, becoming the oldest known gorilla and a matriarch to 3 generations. England, 1944. Mrs. Hale plays her accordion for nearby American soldiers outside her home. By spring 1944, over 1.5 million United States troops were in Britain preparing for the Normandy landings, and street music like this lifted morale. Abu Simbel, 1856. A visitor stands on the lap of Rameses II. Each seated figure is about 20 meters tall, carved into the cliff in the 13th century BCE. In the 1960s, UNESCO cut the temple into blocks and moved it uphill to save it from the rising lake. Finland, April 28, 1942. Men of the 61st Infantry Regiment hold a spruce camouflage trench near Shemensky during the Continuation War. The unit, part of the 17th Division, was known for tough defense on the Karelian Isthmus and often carried the Suomi KP-31 seen here. A saved pack of Rossiyski cigarettes from the USSR, bought in 1985, shows state-run production and a folk art pattern inspired by Kokloma. Everyday items like this outlive the country that made them, becoming small records of design and language. Germany, January 1944. Recruits get helmets and kit for Panzergrenadier Division Großdeutschland. Born from a Berlin Guard regiment, it became a mechanized force that often received priority gear on the Eastern Front. London, 18th of December, 1947. Oslo sent a tall Norway spruce to Trafalgar Square as thanks for British support during the war. The gift became a yearly tradition, with a tree cut from Norwegian forests and lit each December. United States, December 1947. Crews tested surplus World War II flamethrowers to melt deep snow after big storms. The trials burned lots of fuel, scorched pavement, and were soon dropped in favor of plows and salt. Washington, 1927. Visitors line up for the White House New Year's reception, where the president greeted people one by one. The open house tradition began under Thomas Jefferson and ended in the 1930s as crowds grew too large for security. In 1915, Machu Picchu lay under jungle, only 4 years after Hiram Bingham brought the Inca site to world attention. By 2020, careful restoration revealed its terraces and stone houses on a ridge about 2,430 meters high, now a World Heritage Site. Early 1900s coal miners pose with carbide lamps and metal lunch pails. Typical pay was about 22 cents an hour. Many were paid in company scrip and worked long 12-hour shifts underground, keeping yearly earnings near $200 to $400. Before the 1930s, there was no canned beer. Kruger's Cream Ale arrived in 1935 in flat-top cans opened with a church key. Crosswords debuted in 1913, and iced tea surged after the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair. Waikiki, late 1800s. Two Hawaiian watermen stand with outrigger canoes, with Diamond Head behind them. Polynesian outrigger designs let paddlers surf and fish in rough Pacific water long before modern boards. Honolulu, August 12, 1898. At Iolani Palace, the Hawaiian Kingdom flag was lowered and the United States flag raised, marking annexation as a U.S. territory. The palace, home to Hawaii's last monarchs, became the only royal residence on American soil, and later a museum. August 14, 1912. The Rodney and Otamatea Times warned that burning about 2 billion tons of coal a year would add 7 billion tons of carbon dioxide to the air. It said this blanket could warm the planet over time, an early public link between coal use and rising temperature. London, 1979. Rows of retired wax heads at Madame Tussauds site on shelves, each tagged for possible reuse. A single head can take thousands of measurements, and hair inserted one strand at a time, so the museum keeps them for decades. Two performers box in stacked inner tube suits, inspired by Michelin's mascot, circa 1917. The character, named Bibendum and introduced in 1898, starred in parades and publicity stunts like this to sell tires. Pittsburgh's Smoky City years. Coal-fired mills and home furnaces made midday skies so dim that streetlights stayed on. Smoke control laws in 1946 and cleaner fuels began clearing the air by the late 1950s. Britain, 1934. A one-man tracked tankette fitted with a light machine gun promised cheap mobile firepower. Trials showed one operator could not drive, observe, and shoot at the same time, so the Army dropped the idea for two-man scout carriers. Tunisia, 1928. A trained zebra clears a jump in a show nicknamed the Zebra Olympics. Zebras are famously hard to ride and rarely domesticated, so only a few were ever trained for circus or publicity stunts. New Hampshire's Mount Washington Cog Railway, opened in 1869, was the world's first mountain climbing rack and pinion train. It hauls cars up grades near 37% to the 6,288-foot summit, and early rides used open coaches like this. The 1978 GE Widescreen 1000 used rear projection to bring one of the first big-screen pictures into living rooms. Paired with a top-loading VCR, the console cost several $1,000s and weighed close to a small piano. Mechanical contact tachometer, approximately initial middle, XX century. The cone is applied to the shaft. The gears count the revolutions. The scale shows the RPM for a given interval. Moulin Rouge Garden, Paris, around 1900. The giant plaster elephant, brought from the 1889 Paris World's Fair, towers over the café. Inside the elephant was a small room for guests, while the nearby stage hosted live dance shows for Belle Epoque crowds. AEG Mignon Index typewriter, around 1910. You point to a letter on the glass chart, press the lever, and a type cylinder prints it. The cylinder could be swapped for other fonts and languages, so this compact machine was loved for forms and labels in early offices. Nancy Love, founder of the Women's Auxiliary Ferrying Squadron, leans from a B-17 called Queen Bee. In 1943, she and Betty Gillies became the first women to fly this heavy bomber, opening the door for women to ferry frontline aircraft across the United States. Hand-filled gelatin capsules in a small paper box. Hiley's Drugstore, Edgemont, South Dakota, dated January 2, 1947. Before plastic vials, pharmacists packed custom prescriptions like this with handwritten labels and directions. April 1861, Washington, D.C. The Cassius M. Clay Battalion stands on the South Lawn to guard the White House soon after the war began. Formed by Kentucky reformer Cassius Marcellus Clay, these volunteers protected the building until full Army units reached the Capitol, not Walt Disney. This is the first Oval Office in the White House, photographed in the 1910s after President William Howard Taft created it in 1909. Before the 1929 fire and Franklin Delano Roosevelt's redesign, the president worked here with a fireplace and a single chandelier. Vogue Studio, around 1930. Louis Vuitton's flat-topped trunks wear the monogram canvas introduced in 1896 to deter copycats. Founded in 1854, the firm's stackable trunks reshaped travel by replacing heavy round-top chests on steamships.